This is Callum. He's a 19-year-old AI agency owner who's been working in the info product space for the last 2 years. The problem is that he is so good at fulfillment that he's kept himself stuck as a freelancer and not an agency owner. In this video, we take his AI skills and turn those into a productized offer that he can sell to brick and mortar businesses. Okie dokie. Callum, I'm excited for this, man. You ready to hop in?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
So, best place to start is just with context on you. If I'm looking in the other direction, I'm just taking some notes here, but just kind of give us an overall context on you.
Yeah, so my name's Callum. I'm 19 from the UK, and I've been working in like the online business space for the last, I guess, 2 years, developing skills of like sales, AI, everything like operations. And I've worked inside some really cool businesses, but kind of looking to go and start my own agency alongside the work I'm currently doing in the info space, as we're in like a gold rush right now, of how I'd like to look at things with AI and implementing that into like more white collar businesses. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing.
But if you're already good with AI, then you should already be successful, right? Isn't that how it works?
Well, I mean, not really, because I feel like I'm lacking the actual agency knowledge and how to actually get started and implement this into like other
It would be
people's
crazy if
businesses.
this was like the thesis of all my videos, right?
Yeah, it would be a bit nuts, right? Yeah, I think it would be
Well, no, I mean,
crazy,
I
but
think
yeah.
that this brings back a pretty important point, which is there's the skills, which you're extremely talented. Obviously, I've seen some of the stuff that you've done. You did some stuff for us too. You're extremely talented, but it's also on top of that, it's being able to sell the skill. So I used a funny analogy in a training the other day, and people are not going to like this analogy, but I basically said you have the car salesman and then you have the mechanic. So as an agency owner, you have to answer the question of like, do you want to be the car salesman, which nobody wants to think about themselves as a car salesman, right? Or do you want to be the mechanic? Because the car salesman, even though they are the car salesman, by getting face to face with clients, sales, that sort of thing, they're going to make a lot more money than the mechanic. But I
Yeah.
think what happens is sometimes when you already have some of the skills already, you can transfer those into, scaling an agency maybe a little bit easier in some cases. So, explain to me kind of what you're thinking in terms of what you want to offer and just kind of the foundations that you have so far.
Yeah, so I already have kind of like a client, and I've done a little bit of work in the past with like more white collar businesses, which is like the angle I'm looking to take is kind of accountancy firms, kind of law firms maybe, and actually replacing kind of some of their tech needs inside their business. So reducing the operational complexity, the need for like a lot of team members, and generally like the actual tech stack that they have inside their business. Like they're paying all this money on these softwares where they could build their own one in house, that does a lot of the tools they need. Yeah, so that's kind of the angle. And then also like a lot of them just use ChatGPT and think they're, ahead of the curve, but they're really, really far behind. And I think there's gonna be like a big dynamic switch in the next like 12 to 18 months with
Hmm.
AI. And it's
Yeah, of
actually going to go in, and there's going to be like a big change, I think, even in the economy, to be honest with you, just
course.
with how it's moving.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree. Like what a lot of people kind of do when they start with agency is they just kind of pick a random niche that sounds good, and it's almost like they throw a dart, at a dartboard, and then wherever it lands, that's what they're going to go with in a way.
Yeah.
So you already have a niche, you have a foundation kind of laid. What do you think is the big problem, like to go into the brain of accountants, like what is the big problem that these accountants have that you think you can solve?
I think that they're worried about AI. Like for example, my client, he's like someone I know pretty well, and his problem is he thinks he knows what's going on, and he's worried about like the future for his staff, right? Like he thinks he's ahead of the curve right now when he's just using basic AI tools. He's heard of like his make.com and he's heard of these things, but he still has 3 or 4 team members in his company that are client facing, and they're answering emails all day and stuff like that, when those kind of jobs can get replaced by AI, in my opinion, just now. And then he
And he
also has like
owns
a,
the firm, right?
yeah, he owns the firm. He employs about 30 to 40 people. So he's quite successful. but yeah, so that's kind of what he's got going on, and then he was telling me how much he pays in like, you know, like basically he was telling me the profit margins in the business, and then how much he's paying on like tech stack, accounting softwares that he uses are really really expensive, but they do very like minimal things, which nowadays you can kind of like build those yourself. Whereas like 12 months ago, I don't think that would have been the case. So if you can kind of go into a business and personalize and build some catered tools for them and reduce kind of the workload that the people have to do, it's not like necessarily replace the team members, right? It's more of like get them to focus on higher leverage tasks and things that like actually move the needle forward of like whether that's freeing them up time for them to, you know, potentially bring in new customers or improve the service delivery that they provide to their clients and stuff like that is kind of the angle that I'm wanting to take. And I think that's like a big pain point, right? Like a lot of people just sell them like phone receptionists and stuff like that, and they're good, right? They work. But I think more often than not, actually improving the operational structure of the business will be like long term beneficial.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Have you seen some of my content where I kind of talk about there's only a certain type of business that true automation really makes sense for, and it's a business that has scaled enough where they actually have, because you know this probably, but everybody thinks they need automations, but the average person needs like two or three set up, and then it's like, okay, dude, you're good. You know, it's not like you're going to be able to do huge builds for small companies. Whereas with some of these bigger companies, you know, you said like 30 to 40 people that they have at the accounting firm, there's actually real automation that could be built that could really improve their operational efficiency. And so like with a client like that, some of the automation stuff can, you know, definitely make sense because you're actually still making them money, right? Like my whole thing is you want to build a hybrid offer, which is an offer that makes the client money and saves them time. Well, for most people, that means lead generation, getting them customers, getting them, you know, new clients, etc. But if there is a certain archetype of client where you can make them a lot of money by saving them money because they're big enough. And it sounds like that's the kind of client that you're working with now, or that, you know,
yeah,
you kind of
yeah, that's
are
definitely the
working on
case
doing
with
something
them.
with.
Yeah, yeah. So, in the past, I kind of built them out some very simple like make.com automations, right? And they're big enough, and they had like two or three sales team members, and then a couple people who help onboard the clients and get all their documents in check, and stuff like that. So we built some workflows just to kind of automate the process, like automate emails back and forth when a client joins, when a client needs to update information, like maybe it's uploading tax documents or something like that. Built some automations in place for those things, and they set that saved them time, but it didn't necessarily like build a big enough like pain gap, I guess, inside their business. Like they saw it worked, but it's not like it replaced, you know, Stephanie who's on the front desk. It's not replacing her job, if that makes sense. Like it's not a threat to
Mm,
her. It just makes her life a little bit easier. But it's not like, you know, she's gonna go and do anything else. She's just gonna monitor that. If that makes sense.
yeah. And
Yeah.
this is why it's so important that it's like solving a specific problem for a specific person in a specific way. Because, like I was saying earlier, a lot of people just throw the dart at the dartboard, pick a random niche, and they don't actually know any of the problems that that niche actually struggles with. Because the problems that you're going to solve for an accountant are probably going to be much different than, as an example, the problems that you're going to solve for a realtor or a life insurance salesman or a chiropractor or a med spa. And so as you work with this client, what you really get the opportunity to do is like figure out what are the high leverage problems to solve. You know, like what are the biggest problems that you could solve that keep them up at night or that cost them a ton of money or, you know, whatever that is. And then basically you just continue to sell that solution to other people like them.
Yeah.
And I went kind of a high volume model, right? So I think there's kind of two ways to run an agency. I went a high volume model where, you know, we sold basically a $2,500 a month service. The fulfillment was the exact same every single time. And, you know, we did volume with that. You know, we were enrolling 20, 30 clients a month. That was always the target, to enroll a bunch of clients. And then there's other models, though, that can be more boutique where it's like, hey, we work with these big CPAs as an example, you know, CPAs that are 50 plus employee firms, and we do this large scale bit of automations for them, as an example. And so I'm actually working with a guy right now who's working with property management companies. Property management companies, big, they have a lot of doors that they manage, etc. And what we kind of talked about was the idea of you have this kind of big offer, but that's kind of a hard thing to sell somebody on the front end. So I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but what are you thinking like some of the biggest problems that you can solve like for this firm are?
Yeah. Yeah. So that takes me kind of into the next thing. Obviously, I've worked with them a little bit already, and I know there's a lot of problems that they have, right? That's like the tech stack. That's, also, I guess for the business owner as well. I know from his, like, what his conversation he's had with me that his margins aren't crazy in the business and they're never going to be. But if you can potentially, um, free up some of the accountants' time so they can bring in more customers, right, and fulfill better for those customers, and they can handle that workload. That would make them more money in turn. So that would be kind of like using AI within their fulfillment process. So as the accountant, maybe you have like audits, automated audits that go on, or automated. I'm not sure the ins and outs of accountancy, but the work they do to like check people's payments, etc. That can then get slightly automated to free them up time, so they don't spend 4 hours on a task. They might spend 1 hour on it. So from there, like I want to see if there's a bigger pain point, like you said, and then I can target an offer. But initially, I'm thinking of maybe going in and saying, hey, I'll free up X amount of time for your business, and then just build some systems around that necessarily. And because yeah, like if they want to downsize the team and hand more off to AI, they can do that. But also if they're trying to scale, they can still do both at the same time, or whatever that looks like. So it's kind of that angle I was thinking. But again, I want to make it like a no-brainer offer, if that makes sense. Like opposed to something that's
Of
like
course.
everyone sells them lead generation or something. But if they can't fulfill for those leads, or they can't handle the fulfillment, I want to be able to help them out with that. It's kind of the
Yeah.
angle I think.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So I think the reason I want to talk specifically about this client is because since you already have a client with a big problem that we know other people have that problem, this could be the foundation for your entire agency. So we're working in a little bit different of an order where it's like, typically with people, it's you find a niche, you do market research, you do that market research through sales calls, so on and so forth. You're kind of already in a position where you get good results for this firm with a specific system. That's your whole thing. Like that's your whole system. That's what you market. That's
Yeah.
what you scale, right? So you're not in a position where like we really need to think about prospecting or sales. The way I see it, this might surprise people, but the way I would see it is if you just get monster results and a monster case study for a 50-person accounting firm and you get to basically use that as your case study, that's a big thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Especially like if you can market that the right way as well. Like if I could call up the other accountancy firms in the town or the area, right? And be like, "Hey, I got this result. Do you know of like this person at this firm? Like the CEO of that firm?" They probably do, right? They probably do. And then they're like, "Okay, wow, I'm inclined to kind of speak to this person to see." So it's a really good acquisition source from
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Right? Because what does client acquisition come down to every single time? Well, it's trust. And one of the ways to build trust is not the only way, but one of the ways to build the trust is through case studies. And it's like case studies can be good in multiple ways. You can have one big case study. Like I always use the example, imagine if Tony Robbins started a lead generation agency and I helped him scale it, right? Like, and I was like,
Yeah.
we scaled Tony Robbins lead generation agency. He would never do that. But as an example, that would be a huge case study. That would be something that I would be willing to divert my time in order to work on because I would know how marketable of a case study that is, right? Or you can just have like a high volume, right? I've worked with a bunch of people and I've helped a bunch of people get results, but not necessarily anybody's a big name or a recognizable face kind of in that world, right?
Yeah.
So, dude, I think what you need to do is you need to conduct essentially a full audit for this client where you sit down for like an hour or 2 hours and you basically just say like, look, man, I want to sit down with you. I want to audit literally everything. Also would love if you would bring, your top accountant, bring me your superstar. And I also want to talk with them and just understand like a step by step of everything they do throughout the day. And then from there, you do like a 1 or 2 hour audit. And then I would just reverse engineer the entire plan of how you're going to like make them, 50 or 80% more efficient. And the way I would frame it to the business owner, I'd be like, hey, realistically, I could probably charge you for this because it's going to be a super deep dive. And then like, I'm going to go away from the call. I'm going to, prepare some things and get some stuff together. And you guys can either just try to implement it on your own, which is going to be really hard, or you could just have me do it for you. And I could just like kind of plug in. But right now, we're kind of shooting blind because we don't necessarily know what are the problems that they're having that need to be solved. Because realistically, you're good enough with AI where whenever you figure out what the problems are, you're going to be able to solve them. You're going to be able to figure out the solution to them, regardless of what tool you use or how you do it or whatever. But then the benefit on the other side of that is obvious, right? Hey, if we can, let's say we get recurring emails that are going, this is just a random one that I'm thinking of. I don't really know the accounting niche either. Recurring emails that go out when it's time for somebody to file their tax deadline, or automated follow-up that's happening where a customer last year sent in their documents and they haven't sent in their documents yet. It starts to follow up with them automatically via AI, so the person doesn't have to reach out to them specifically, as an example. Something like that. Or even figuring out as well, hey, is there a way that if we free up kind of your accountants and your CPAs, that we build out a new, more expensive kind of offer that they now start to go out and pitch to all of their current clients and try to get upsells and increase lifetime value, right? Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that I like saying is, what if you can figure out some sort of proprietary AI thing that you can build for them, like a bookkeeping offer, or maybe some sort of other thing that helps manage the person's finances, or if they're a business, their bookkeeping or whatever. You build that. That's a new thing for them to sell, as an example. But they probably don't have time to sell extra things right now or try to upsell people because they're also busy. So like there's two layers. It's like, how can we automate everything that they're doing now that can be automated? Because there's going to be some things that can't be automated, I'm sure. But how do we automate everything now that can be automated? And then from there, what do we build after that that could be something that now they have more free time, they could go out and sell and upsell to their current people to both increase their margins, make them more money, more lifetime value, so on and so forth.
Yeah, that all makes sense. It's like, I didn't really think of it that way. So that's like
well, that's what I'm here for, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
So
on top of that, would you just niche down? Would you just go like, okay, cool, we've picked accountants, let's just dive into that. Let's do that.
Well,
like wholly. Or would you kind of keep it a little bit more broad and like any kind of business like that, accountants, lawyers, or like, would you dive into like one specific niche?
Yeah. All you really do as an agency is you just solve someone's problem. And so if you have a proven track record of solving a problem, solving it well, solving it through a specific way, then you don't need to work with anyone else. That's the way I would think about it. So like, the best example of this is Alex Hormozy. Alex Hormozy made this whole system for gyms that solved the problems that gyms had. He had all this cool stuff and all this complex offer. And he made like $50 million a year just doing the gyms. And like gyms aren't even a good niche, by the way. Like gym owners are not rich. That like I wouldn't want to work with gyms as an example. Sorry to anybody watching that works with gyms, but gyms are kind of a crappy niche. So I think the way I would think about it is like, once you have mastered the solution for like a very specific problem, then you can just continue to solve that problem, and you don't have to go out and do anything like fancy or new. It's just like, okay, we've solved this one big problem, and then we're just going to continue doing this over and over and over and over again, right? It's like, if you really think about a lot of people that create wealth, like to zoom out of like the agency side for a minute, like a lot of times people just find like this one really specific thing that's broken or some problem, and they just get really good at fixing it. And it's like, okay, you don't really have to ever do anything else again. You just continue to solve that problem. So the way I would look at the deal you have right now with this accountant, and this is kind of interesting because I'm always telling people like, don't focus on fulfillment, just acquire clients. Don't focus on fulfillment, just acquire clients. But you're in a unique scenario where you already have a really big opportunity. You already have, a relationship with this client, and you already have the skills to do it and fulfill it. So what I really preach, and my whole thesis of my channel, is that you want to focus on the highest leverage thing. Now, the highest leverage thing for most people is to focus on sales. But the reason that I think your highest leverage thing right now is to figure out how to get this person the best results possible, is because number one, this could be a good client, you make a lot of money from them, etc. But this could drive, your whole agency, your whole solution, your whole offer to accountants like forever. That's why this is super high leverage. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think just double down on what we got going on now and then find, the actual problem and then how we can market that to other people or how we get the best results with this person. Then we build like a package. Because that's one of the things, right? Like I understand AI and I understand these things, but I don't understand all the business elements, especially in more of an agency setting opposed to, maybe it's like online products or something like that. So with that being said, like how would you incorporate like onboarding processes and everything else like after or while I do this client to then try and scale this one up and then all the future ones because I want to build it into like an agency opposed to just being like a freelancer, right? Because I think that's a trap that people get stuck in.
Of course.
Like they maybe have one or two clients and they're just stuck fulfilling for those. Like how do you kind of build the processes as an agency owner to get out of that, whether that's onboarding or fulfillment, and would you even like again, because like I don't have all the time in the world to put into this. Like I still have like other like things going on. Like would you bring someone in who's trusted to like help with the fulfillment and pay them a small percentage, or like what would that look like after I find the proven offer? Because that's obviously the highest leverage thing to do.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there, right?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I get to use one of my favorite quotes, which is a lot to unpack there. It's one of my favorite things. I just was trying to figure out a way I could say that because it's one of my favorite things to say, but there is a lot to unpack there in all seriousness, right? The way that I would first think about this is what's going to happen with this client is you're going to go in and solve a bunch of problems for them and probably just be able to blow their mind, because I personally think that like info is like a lot of info people are really on the front lines of a lot of things that like typical businesses don't do, as an example, right? So I always give the example is like roofers don't run VSLs. As an example.
Exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say like they don't have VSL funnels
exactly.
or webinars,
And so you think like, is there really a reason that a roofer wouldn't have a VSL? Like a VSL is a good thing. It convinces somebody that they should work with you. Like, is there a reason they don't do a VSL? I don't know. It's an interesting thing. But like marketers are kind of on the front lines of innovation. So like likely you're going to, or not even just marketers, but honestly just like new age people that work on like online info, this kind of space. Agency kind of info space. So I think when you get into and you get to work into the CPA, you're going to find a bunch of things that you can help improve the operational efficiency with. Like I doubt they even have let's just do something random. I doubt they even have a good process for like client onboarding, as an example, or like getting everyone's documents sent over in time, or following, like the one that I keep going back to is following up with people who worked with them last year but haven't submitted any documents for this year. And like that's probably something that they spend manual time on right now is, hey, this person hasn't sent us their stuff yet. I'm going to call them. I'm going to reach out to them, etc. There's like no reason that a human being should do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think what'll happen... Go ahead, sorry.
Carry on, John. I was saying even other little things, like they probably don't even know what like Claude is, and Claude has a direct integration with like Excel, and like, if the accountants could ask that questions when they're looking at a spreadsheet, like dude, that's like a very valuable service to save them time too. So there's probably so many to unpack that like I would be lost of how all the different things I could go and build, I guess, right?
Of course. And so there's two parts to that. So number one, yes, you probably are going to need somebody to help you. In terms of how you would compensate that person, you thought about it in the right way, just some sort of revenue share or profit share, right? And you'll be able to figure out what's fair based on what all you're going to need them to be doing, and then what all you're going to be undertaking. Because if it's like going to be a huge build that's going to take you like 3 months, then it's going to be different in terms of what you might pay somebody to help you with that, as an example, right?
Yeah.
So what I would then do from there is I would figure out what is the most efficient thing that we did for them. Like what was the biggest thing that we did for them where they were like, oh, this one change or this one thing that you guys did was like worth the entire investment, right? So you always kind of have, when you work with a client, you always have one big thing. It's like the Pareto principle, like, 20% of what you do gets them 80% of the results kind of thing. You're going to be able to find that after you solve a bunch of problems for them. And then all you do is just reverse engineer it and then just package that into your front end offer. That just becomes your offer.
Yeah,
And
that
so
makes
it's like,
sense.
that's super scalable. You can just do that over and over and over again, whatever that might be. Maybe it's just like literally the Claude into Excel thing. Okay. That might just become your front end offer. And depending on how productized it is, by the way, you might only sell it for $9.97 a month, but if it's super easy to fulfill and it gets good results, you bring people in on that and then you upsell them a bigger build, as an example,
Yeah.
right?
And it's like you don't need to, have a lot of trust in someone to pay them 997 a month opposed to
As an
maybe like a
example,
10K package, right? Which
as
maybe
an
would be the
example. So
case,
like
right? Yeah.
what you're going to be doing for this client, you're in kind of a position where you already have a relationship there. It would be hard to get somebody to just throw you the keys to the castle when you first meet them. This is why growth operators, like, it's such a big deal when they get a client, because it's really hard to convince somebody on growth operating, because they basically have to give you the keys to the castle and say like, yo, I'm going to give you 20% of my business up front, or I'm going to give you a big investment up front and just like go wild. That's why growth operating, like nobody runs ads for growth operating. Everybody, how do people do growth operating? They build relationships, they meet somebody in person, they go to masterminds, because it's got to be a peer-to-peer, like human trust, because it's such a big commitment, as an example, right?
And it's even another thing as well, like in what other business opposed to online would you just go to an accountant, they'd give you 20% of their business, I feel like maybe,
Exactly.
yeah, that's the other thing as well. It's
Or
completely
this
different.
big, huge build out that's going to take 3 months and this, you're going to charge an arm and a leg for. So that's probably going to be a hard thing to market and sell up front, but it's still a really good service that is super valuable. And so what I would say is you figure out, after you do this big build for this client, you figure out what was kind of the highest leverage thing that we did, what can we do on a repeatable, scalable basis, and then how can we just market and sell that.
Okay. And then like for like the positioning of that offer, literally just we do this service, we fulfill on this would be like the very basic
I
kind of
mean, you could literally just run the accountant automation system as an example.
yeah.
You can go nuts with the word accountant. That's what I would just go crazy with that. Or like,
Yeah.
CPA. You could go nuts with the word CPA. That could be your root word, or accountant could be your root word. Accountant is kind of long, but you could do like CPA. I would say automations, but you can't do automations because it would be two
Yeah,
A's, and I don't like to do that,
yeah.
where it's two vowels that run up next to each other. But I would position it all around CPAs or accountants. I would put that in the name. And then literally my whole offer would be, hey, we work with this one accountant. They were spending and also too, you reverse engineer all the problems that other accountants are having because you already solved the problems for another accountant.
Yeah.
People don't understand, dude. Like, every person is the same, bro. Like, people don't get this. When I worked with realtors, literally like a 60-year-old woman in California who was a realtor was like the exact same as like a 20-year-old dude in Nashville who was a realtor, in terms of they weren't the same like background or ethnicity or gender or whatever, but they had the same problems, and the majority of the time they wanted the same thing. So it's like, what are their problems? For realtors, it was they were referral only. It's very inconsistent because of that. They're very insecure because they don't know where their next client is coming from. Their business feels like luck, which is kind of a very insecure feeling, because you're like, oh, well, I just randomly got this client, but if I wouldn't have randomly got that client, like, I would be kind of screwed. That's kind of how the realtor
Yeah.
mindset works. And that was like
I
every
guess
realtor.
yeah, that makes
And so
sense.
that
That
just
makes a lot
became
of
the problem that
sense.
we solved.
hmm And then like the
So,
size of the client as well. Like would you work with really small realtors, let's say there's a realtor in a really, really small town and there's not getting a lot of deals, or would you try and target the people like if you solve the problem for someone in New York, for example, let's say New York, right? Big city, big example. Like would you just target people in like bigger cities, so then you can target people in Los Angeles and Miami and all these other places? Like I guess if you put out my would you just target agents, like accountancy firms in kind of the same size, so like 30 to 100 employees, or would you kind of target and keep it broad in the positioning of like anyone who's an accountant? So it could be someone who's got 10 employees or one, or there's two or three, or would you just keep it at the bigger point? That was another question.
Yeah, your offer by design is always going to fit into a certain market anyway, right? So like that's the way that I would think about it. Like just by the way the market works, your offer is going to fit into like it a certain way, right? So as an example, I don't have agencies book a call with me that are making $5 million a month and that are like on the Inc. 500 list. You know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
just by the design of like how my offer works and like how we specifically make content around the offer and like the landing, like it's just kind of designed to a certain type of person. So even with my offer that we sold to realtors, well, there was some realtors that just genuinely didn't need our offer because they had already kind of solved the problem of client acquisition. That was the problem that we solved. And so I think by whatever mechanism you find to be the one that solves the problem, like the high leverage one, that will in a way almost like be what attracts clients and in terms of what kind of clients they are. And so like most of the people that booked with us were normally at the same level. And I think that's just because our offer spoke to people at a certain level. I guess if
Okay,
that makes sense.
got it. No, that makes complete sense. I don't know if it was a stupid question or
No,
not,
not at
but
all.
yeah, it
Not at all.
makes sense.
It's also we don't know because we don't know how broad, as an example, the problem you're solving will be. If it's like the Excel Claude thing that can kind of automate some of the processes, well, you might find a solo accountant who, is out on their own and does their own thing who wants to get that set up just for themselves, who might pay $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month just to automate some
Yeah,
processes. But if, but also too, you might be able to do it in a way where you do have it in kind of a package format where it's like you do it on an individual person basis and then you scale up and you say if you have a 50-person firm rather than charging $1,000 a month per person, we have an enterprise plan. You wouldn't say
yeah,
enterprise plan, but we have like, you get what I'm trying to say, where we do this for 50 people at a time and we charge
makes
less per
sense.
person.
Yeah, that does make sense. That's like a good kind of different angle of it as well, I think, because you can target every demographic opposed to just one-time setup. So anyone can buy your offer too, which is pretty cool.
SaaS
Um,
companies do this super well. Like SaaS companies are the best at this, dude. Like you have to think there's people that are starting their business right now that have never made a dollar in their entire life in business that are signing up for a Slack subscription right now, right? You know who else is
yeah,
using Slack? Literal billionaires, dude,
yeah,
who are billionaires. So it's like Slack, what have they done so well? They have figured out how to get every single type of person giving them money. And for that
mhm,
reason, they have like the best business model because everyone pays them.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I was just thinking about that there. Like, yeah, there's probably like Fortune 500 companies that all use Slack, and then
Of
there's,
course,
someone who uses Slack just to check kind of, notifications and
of
stuff, and
course. Or
there's one
Zoom, as an
person.
example.
Yeah, Zoom, yeah. Even
Apple,
like Calendly or anything like that as
Calendly.
well. Kind of, yeah,
Yeah,
super
none
cool.
of these have a specific market that they turn away people from because they have such a, but why? Because it's such a repeatable, scalable thing. It's very high leverage. So that's why it's
Makes
like,
sense.
let's figure out the thing that we can deliver in a very automated way, that we can kind of do the same thing in a very productized way every single time. And then if that is the case, well, we put ourselves in a position where like we can sell it to whoever in however large or small of a quantity, and we're still making money and we're still scaling.
Yeah, and then I guess on the flip side of that, you can also at the same time have, or you could go down the different route of having a super customized package where it's really, really high ticket, where you go in and change all the processes in their business and kind of, like, yeah, so you can do both. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And you can do that after you kind of get your claws into their business, right? After you prove that you get them results with the first thing, then naturally they want you to sell them the next thing. This is kind of going back to what I was explaining on the growth operator side, right? Which is the reason it's really hard to sell growth operator is because it's such a big commitment up front. And so that's why a lot of growth operators have success with selling a smaller thing or selling a piece of what they do, and then when they get somebody results with that, they've got the trust, they've got the working relationship in place. Well, then they say, "Hey, we're gonna try to upsell you our bigger thing," as an example.
Makes sense. Yeah, I see that happen a lot. So, yeah, kind of just got to apply all the principles from like info and online business into kind of what I'm doing here. It's the exact kind of same thing. Just need to understand the fundamentals, I guess, of it all.
Yeah.
Um,
But again, you're kind
yeah,
of shooting in the dark because you need to have an audit with the client. And I would have them, have the client come, but also have one of the CPAs come. And then you just do a complete audit of what is everything they're doing. And then you build out a game plan to basically automate every possible thing you
yeah.
can.
Yeah, you could even bring more members. You could bring, the accountant. We could maybe start with the accountant and the CEO, but then you could also bring in, the salesperson, could bring in the head of HR. So then you have
Hmm,
all the different aspects, and then you're like, okay, cool, what can we
absolutely.
automate? Okay, yeah, it's a very different kind of situation, I guess, opposed to someone who's like not got a client and kind of just trying to figure out what they should name the agency, what niche or niche they should target, right? But yeah, is there any other like kind of words of wisdom on the topic or what I should do after I've done the audit, to like structure it the best way possible?
Of course. So, what it needs to feed back to is what is the thing that they do that essentially makes them the most money? And how does your offer allow them to essentially buy back their time and focus more on the revenue generating activities? Like, that's what I would try to always close it up with, because I think sometimes people get so in depth on like the features and the automations and the tech and all this kind of stuff that they forget to state like, hey, this is actually the point of all this. Like, here's the reason that we're actually doing this in the first place,
Yeah,
which is
makes sense.
to save you time, make you more money, etc. And then I would also, when you're doing that audit, if you're going to loop in some other people, like figure out what are all the different packages that they sell as well, and like maybe even figuring out how, I think even by doing discovery, you're going to figure out some of the holes in the process. So, you say something like, how many packages do you guys have? Well, maybe they have three. Maybe they have like just a filing, a bookkeeping plus a filing, and then maybe like a full service one as an example. And then you're going to ask naturally, like, okay, how many customers do you have on this one? How many do you have on this one? What is the average? Probably not even going to know any of that stuff, right? Unless they're very sophisticated. They're probably not even going to know, like, what is the lifetime value? How long do people stay? Having like up to date, maybe since they're accounting firm, they might have a little bit more up to date records, I would hope. But the point is, like, even just figuring out some of the stuff on the sales side could be super effective, because it's like, if you can help them figure out their lifetime value, they get some good tracking in place with like Looker Studio or dashboards or CRM. Like, that could also be a very, very valuable thing. And that's a completely different process. That's a front end sales process. And so if that really works well, then maybe that could be the positioning of your whole offer, which is, hey, we come in, we build a bunch of efficiency and sales operations on the front end. We build this process of reporting and data analysis and blah, 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 blah. And then we circle back to the back end of the business and we focus on all these back end problems. So the way I would think about it is like, get to treat this client as, of course, an opportunity to make money, have a big client, yada, 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 woohoo, right? But the point is, what's even better is, if you do this the right way, you literally get to learn all of the problems of this niche, because again, like, all of these people are the same. They all struggle with the same problems. You get to solve all the problems. You get to troubleshoot like the best way to do it. And then all of that wraps into your whole marketing message, your whole offer, your whole thing,
Mhm.
right? Like, think about my offer with AC, just to give an example of myself. We literally just solve all the problems that I ran into as I scaled my agency to seven figures a year and closed 771 clients and, the whole thing. Everybody's heard it already. But the point is, like, all we do is, when we work with people, we just solve the problems. And so, like, I know what the problems are because I ran into them and I also solved them. This is becoming a great pitch for AC, by the way, but I'm being genuine when I say this. The reason the offer works and it makes sense is because it's just like, hey, you have these problems. I know, because I was once in your shoes and I had the same problems. I figured out the best and most efficient way to solve them. I'm going to help you solve them. That's a good offer, right? That's really the fundamentals of what an offer is. So in a way, like, you see a lot of people that have a offer that they end up selling. A lot of times they are the archetype or the person that they help. So I'm a good example. Most coaching offers are a good example of this. Like me, I had an agency. I was once an agency owner who struggled. I figured it out. Now I help people that are in the same position that I was in. Alex Hermosi with Gym Launch, same way. Close.com, I actually met the founder. I had a podcast with him that actually never got published, which is kind of another story for another day. But the founder of Close.com, he actually was working on sales teams and doing like sales team stuff and was like, none of the CRM softwares are very good. I'm going to build one for the offer that I'm working on. He built Close.com and then realized, we can make way more money than this or with this than we can with what we're working on now. We're just going to jump ship and do it. And so it's like, you're getting to do this by figuring out the problems, figuring out the best way to solve the problems, solving the problems, figuring out like the highest leverage problems to solve, having a case study, and then being able to package that up into an entire offer. And in the meantime, be able to make money and work with a cool client and get a great case study.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like,
sense.
So it would be stupid for me to be like, yo, dude, you need to go like do prospecting and like go, you already have a good deal on your hands that can, and then after you get results with them, then all the prospecting and the setup and the VSL and the funnel and the branding and the market leader positioning, all that stuff comes after, but all that stuff is much easier to build than it is if you had never solved the problem before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. So it's kind of like go in, get my hands dirty, figure out the problems. Then from there we can go and build out like the unique mechanism, kind of all the actual front facing things, and then we can even frame that into like a guarantee, or like pricing, like based on how much work I do on this kind of build. If obviously I'm going to go and ask and do a full audit after this call, but with that being said, like should I, for the pricing side of things, do you think it's a good idea just to track what I work on this whole build, like the audit and all the processes I find, and then from there I can then go and build like a package, and make sure it sounds reasonable and makes sense, like economically for myself, obviously, right? Like on time, and then also for like the accountancy firms as well, to make sure it actually provides like the value and like a guarantee as well, because you can even frame that into a guarantee for like,
of course,
kind of,
yeah. So you can literally just reverse engineer what you did, but also by being able to do this, you'll figure out what is the economic value associated with every problem that you solve, right? So like a realtor, as an example, if they make $12,000 per deal, well, by adding 2 deals a month for them, they make an extra $24,000 a month. And so in a funny way, it's like even if your service is $12,000 a month, but it gets them an extra deal, they double their money every month. Doubling your money every month is like you would be a gazillionaire, if you could double your money every month consistently, right? So somebody made a joke one time that it was like, if you could consistently get a 2x ROI every single day and you reinvest it every single time, pretty soon you'd have more money than there are atoms like on the earth, as an example. Like it's ridiculous how much it compounds. So you get to figure out like what is the associated ROI with the problem that you solve. And that also makes your sales, marketing, all your processes easier, right? And so it's like by starting with the problem and not figuring out like, who do I need to work with? Like you're going to get to learn it all. That sets the foundation for all of the stuff that I talk about, being able to speak the language, appearing as somebody that they trust, so on and so forth. Like all of that stuff is going to make the entire process of going to acquire clients a lot easier. For most people, it doesn't make sense to start there, but for you, you're already in a position where you have this opportunity. Yeah. So like, why not focus on the highest leverage thing?
Yeah. That makes sense. And obviously I'm hoping this will work out like with this client and everything. But let's say worst case, it doesn't work out with this client, or they don't want to proceed with the audit. I'm sure it's not going to be the case. I have such a good relationship with them. But like, what would you do if you had to start, or if anyone's watching and they're trying to start their own agency, what would you recommend them to do on those kind of missing kind of points you mentioned of like the process?
Yeah, it's definitely two different questions.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is you just do the audit for free. And then you just figure out what all the problems are, and then that's your offer, even if you don't actually solve
a lot of money in the wrong run, so it makes
exactly
sense. Yeah.
So you just do the audit for free, and then they're like, "Yo, we're really struggling with X, Y, and Z." I might even make the argument that if you can do it, you just do it for free and you take the case study. I very rarely recommend people to do that, but if they're like, "Yo, we're not paying for this," of course you're going to try to charge them. But even if they say we can't pay for this or we won't pay for this or whatever, I might just do it for free and say, Here's the problem with a lot of people that do things for free. They do it in this sort of way where they kind of get thrown around and they don't have any leverage. Like I would say, look, I would be willing to do this one thing for free. All that I ask is you do the absolute best case study testimonial for me after we solve the problem and we agree that it's been completed. If you're open to doing that, then I would be willing to do it for free. If they're a big enough name, if it's a big enough person. Going back to the Tony Robbins thing. If Tony Robbins was like, yo, I'm starting a lead generation AI agency, I would consult him for free. You know, if he watches all the videos anyway. So if he's watching, you know, he can just hit me up and we can arrange that, right?
Makes sense.
Nah, he doesn't watch it.
I hope he's watching, but
I hope he's watching too.
I don't think he does, to be honest with you.
Nah, me neither, bro. But point is, so that's what I would do if I was in your shoes. Now, if somebody else is kind of wanting to start from scratch, in a way, you still have to do the exact same thing. You just do it through actual sales calls and discovery. So when you're prospecting, when you're outreaching, when you're building your offer, you start with this minimum viable offer that is your best hypothesis of like what problem you're going to solve, using what means, and how much you're going to charge for it. But what happens is as you do sales calls, you get to learn your market and you get to really understand your market and then figure out, okay, what problems are people having? How can I build a good solution for this problem? And then how can I just rinse and repeat, do it over and over and over again, and then continually improve. And as you get clients, you'll be able to improve this too. So I'll give you some examples. When we were working with real estate agents, we started with lead gen only. We only ran Facebook ads for them. We generated them leads. They did all the follow-up with the leads, right? We very quickly learned realtors don't like to do follow-up. They suck at follow-up. They suck at all of the management of leads. And we started to churn people with that. So we could sell it, but they would leave. So we'd be like, okay, we have to sell something else. So then we started to do the follow-up. So this was the second evolution of the offer. We ran ads. We would follow up with the leads via text and email, you know, all the AI through Go High Level. That was okay, but they still had some work that they had to do. And so then the third evolution was ads, follow up, and we would set their appointments. So we made it like full dummy proof where literally they would just get an email. Hey, Callum, you have an appointment today at 4. Here's the person's information. Call them at 4. And like all they have to do is type in somebody's phone number, or not even type in somebody's phone number, just go into Go High Level, press one button, call the person, boom, they have an appointment. And so that offer, we were able to sell for the most amount of money and it got the best results. But it was through the iteration of we started with this offer, it didn't get good results, or it wasn't the most efficient offer, and then we just continued to improve it. So you kind of do this naturally as you scale, or you should aim to, like your offer should be this thing that evolves. And you kind of make it better and better and better and better as you learn more about your market. And I think that brings me into an important next point, which is you have to know your market in order to effectively sell to them, market to them. You kind of have to be in their brain. And by working with your market, you get to learn more and more about them, right? And so, you know, for me, we were working with realtors and we were going to launch this adjacent thing for mortgage loan officers, right? So I know you're not in the US, but when you have a real estate agent, they work with a mortgage loan officer. And so basically, the mortgage loan officer gives the client a loan to buy the home and then go work with the realtor, right? So like, let's say our client is Billy, you're the mortgage loan officer, I'm the real estate agent. Billy has to go to you, you give him a loan. After you give him a loan, he comes to me and he buys a house. So we're like, okay, this is an adjacent thing. A lot of our real estate clients were actually working with mortgage loan officers as well. So when we would give them a lead, they would go to their mortgage loan officer first. The mortgage loan officer would approve them. They make money on their commission, and then the realtor sells the house. So like the mortgage loan officers that we got through our real estate agents that worked with our real estate agents, they loved us and they loved our service. They would be like, this is awesome. You know, how can I pay you for leads? Blah, 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 blah. So we're like, okay, we're going to launch a mortgage loan arm. And so, you know, we launched it a little later, but I started talking to mortgage loan officers. And I realized like on the sales calls, I'm like, I know nothing about these people. They're using language that I don't understand. Their business works in a completely different way. And like, I'm over here having worked with nearly 800 realtors, and I'm talking to a mortgage loan officer who at face value is very similar to a realtor, but I'm realizing, no, they're actually completely different. And so this is why once you learn the kind of industry language, or you learn about the industry, or you kind of understand the different intricacies and ins and outs of the industry, it provides you with a really good opportunity to just go deeper and deeper and deeper in that industry, become the market leader, and just try to only solve problems for that industry because you kind of like learn how they operate. And that also gives you a lot more trust, right?
Yeah.
So,
I,
as an example, like if I had a sales call with somebody that, wanted to uh, sign up for our agency offer with realtors. Well, if they felt like I knew nothing about real estate or I didn't understand the business or I didn't already have like some level of understanding, then they don't trust me as much. Right. And so like I would have a lot of calls where somebody would say like, "Hey, are you a licensed realtor? Like you sound like you really know what you're talking about." And I'd be like, "No, I'm not. We've just worked with a lot of clients and we've worked with a lot of realtors." Like that in and of itself is sort of a status signaling when you kind of understand them and understand their lingo and that kind of thing. So, like to finish out the point that I was making earlier, you have the people like the guy who started Close.com or Alex Hermosi or like what I do with AC that were their ideal client at one point, solved the problem, and then now help people solve that problem. And then you have people that were like me when I had a real estate marketing agency, which was I had to learn the industry, I had to learn the problems, I had to start to speak the language. And then once I did, everything becomes a lot easier. And so I think that's why like niching down is important. So in a lot of ways, you kind of ask the question like, what would you do if you were me in my shoes? But what would you do if you were somebody else? In a lot of ways, it's doing the same thing. It's just you're going about doing it in a different way.
yeah, I got it. I have a question on that. I know it's kind of maybe not the most related question, but um, like how did your perception of your offer change, right? Because you were selling to these mortgage guys, and you probably thought you had a no-brainer offer for them, right? When you first got told from the realtor or from them that this is like exactly how can you get me leads, and then after talking to the mortgage loaner, right? What did you find out that made you think, oh, this offer is nowhere near like a no-brainer for these guys, or like anything like that? Was that an issue you experienced as well? Because
It
I
wasn't
guess it's
necessarily
something
that the
that's
offer was bad. It's that I could not hold a competent conversation with them because I didn't really. Okay, so what you really should do is you should do some due diligence of trying to understand who it is that you're working with, right? Like, if you were going to go to war, you would try to understand who are we fighting against? What kind of weaponry do they have? Do they have nuclear weapons? Do they not? Do they have guns and tanks? You would want to figure out like, okay, what are we up against here, right? And so I kind of went in with kind of an arrogant mentality, which is I've already worked with a bunch of realtors. These people are no different than realtors. I don't have to do any due diligence. I'm good. I know our offer is good. I know we can get these people results. And then I got on the calls and it's like they're speaking a different language than I was in the discovery phase. And I obviously am kind of like a deer in the headlights and I have no idea what they're talking about. And so this doesn't necessarily like make a big problem for people. It's just you need to do a little bit of due diligence. And so you can do some pre-hand due diligence of trying to learn about real estate, how does their business work, or accounting firms, how are they typically set up, how do they get paid, what do their margins look like. It just allows you to have a more competent conversation in the sales process. When you don't have a lot of case studies yet, that's good because that subliminally builds trust, even sometimes more than case studies can.
it also gives you really good context, I guess, on the fulfillment as well. Like, because if you were talking to the mortgage loaner and he starts using these words, okay, cool. Oh, and then you find out what that word means and it's really important, then you can maybe work around like a solution for getting them leads that are this, like, if they need to be qualified, right? Like, if
Exactly.
he uses a word, make sure like all the leads are this qualification,
Yeah,
stuff
that
like
was
that.
actually one of
So,
the things. They had a bunch of different
really,
types of loans that they would do. And of course, on our fulfillment side, we're going to have to run specific ads for these specific types of loans that they're doing. And so, like in America, a veteran gets a different kind of loan than maybe a normal person. And so, some people might just work with people who do veteran loans. Like you said, that would be an important thing to know before we actually launch their fulfillment. So, yeah, and again, this is something that anybody can do. I'm not saying you have to work with 500 clients to be able to figure this out. It's just some due diligence. It's just studying up on like your clients aren't your enemy, right? But the analogy of war in the enemy is kind of understanding who are we going to battle against before we step foot onto the battlefield.
yeah, makes sense. One final thing on that then. How would you turn the service you gave for like the mortgage loan or in my case the accountancy firm into like a reoccurring model, right? Because I guess it's easier to sell to those people again. If I was to go in and
Great
let's
point.
say they want me to just do a one-time build out, how do
Yep.
I spin that into turning it into
I
like
love
a
this question.
recurring revenue of like a 1K a month retainer or something. Because for me, long term, I'd rather just have like 10 clients that pay me 3 or 4 thousand a month, right? Opposed to, two clients that come and go every month, if that makes sense, or 20 clients that come and go every month, I'd rather have
Yeah.
like a solid foundation.
I love this question. So you have three types of offers, right? You have addition offers, which is where you add something that the client needs or wants, but the problem is addition offers a lot of times give the client more than they can handle. So what happens is you actually put yourself in this position where when you do a really good job, you screw yourself over, you get punished for good behavior, because if you just generate leads for someone and you generate them too many leads, let's say, then what'll happen is, hey man, I need to pause so I can work through all these leads. I don't need you to keep getting me leads. I'm getting behind, right? That's the problem with addition offers. You have subtraction offers, which are the kind of offers where, as an example, you are doing AI automations or workflows or whatever, where you're saving them time. The problem with these offers you've already identified, they have a definition of done. So they can reach a state of completion, right? When they're done, they're done. You don't need to do it anymore. It's like if you build somebody a website, well, they don't need 4 websites. They need 1 website. When the website's done, the project is typically done.
It's
Then
like
you
the
have a
same
hybrid
problem I
offer.
have
Exactly.
in my other business. Like I sell a dashboard, but then you can't turn a dashboard into reoccurring most of the
Exactly.
time. Yeah, I know you
Because
can,
it's definition of
yeah,
done,
yeah,
right? Now, a hybrid offer is one that saves the client time while making the money in the process. And so for that reason, the client never wants you to stop. So if you're making someone money and saving them time, like a good example is a really good financial advisor. If you have an amazing financial advisor and they're making you money every single month, it's completely automated. You don't have to mess with it. You don't have to research stocks. You don't have to do anything. They just multiply your money every single month. You would never want to stop. And you would be comfortable paying them a good percentage of that money that they're making you every single month because it's completely hands off. And so as you work with the client, you can kind of identify what is the hybrid offer. And, it might take time to iterate as well. Like for me, as I explained kind of the 3 iterations of my offer, well, only the 3rd and final version of my offer really was the hybrid offer, where we generated them leads, we did all the follow-up, and we set their appointments. That was an offer where we did have a true hybrid offer where we made the money and saved them time in the process. And so, yeah, it's just figuring out like what can that thing be, and how would you find that? And so maybe that is something on the lead gen side or different packages side, or maybe that is some sort of new offer that you help them build alongside AI that they're selling and they're getting recurring revenue from, and then you're even taking a percentage, of the revenue. Let's say like Go High Level is a great example of this. Go High Level is something that people are going to pay for forever. I mean, I've been a customer of Go High Level for like 6 years, and I probably always will, because Go High Level is a lot less than I make from it, if that makes sense. Like I make a lot more money and save time by having Go High Level. Thus, I'm always going to be willing to use it. So you just got to have to figure out what that is. And it might take
yeah.
time and it might take iterations.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's cool. And then how do you like with that? I guess this is another kind of question. Like, how do you make sure the offer that you have that's reoccurring doesn't just turn into like a headache? Because I think most agencies, and even in the realm I work in, like the online info space, a lot of the time if you have someone on like a growth operator, right, you might take a percentage of someone's business, but they might like, demand a certain level of from you or a certain amount of inputs each month from you, and you might not get, it might be great at the start, right, but let's say their business stagnates, right, and it sits at like a 40K a month. How do you make sure it doesn't just turn into like something where you're getting paid maybe 997 a month, but it's taking you so much time to keep up the maintenance, or if it's like something where you bring in or you do a new build each month, right? How do you make sure that that's actually worth your time on a reoccurring model? I guess, did you experience that with your agency too? Because
No,
no, okay,
but it's not out of a happenstance. It's because we sold a system every single time. So you just answered your own question by asking it. A growth operator, they're doing a lot of different things. They're not selling a system, right? A growth operator is just a fractional COO or CMO or whatever. That means they could have a lot of work one month, they could have not a lot of work another month. They're not really selling a system. So like when I worked with clients, it was a system that they were buying. They were buying our lead gen, follow-up, and appointment setting system. That was our one offer. When they bought it, they understood that it was a system. And systems are kind of easy to automate, right? And so it's really just being able to package it as a system, that works the same way every single time. And when you have a specific person, specific problem, and you solve it in a specific way, because that can be kind of systemized and you can have somebody else running that for you, that makes it a lot easier to not really overinvest into each client. We actually got into another position at my agency where we wanted to get better results for the clients. So we actually started to spend more time with the clients. We pulled ourselves back so much that we were like, okay, maybe we need to actually try to go deeper with these people and try to keep them longer and try to get them even better results by spending more time on their accounts. And so you don't have this problem as much when it's a productized kind of system and people are buying a system rather than if people are buying like a kind of done for you service
Done
kind
with
of
you
thing.
service, right? Where it would be like every month we'll make one AI change, or when something happens in your business, we'll fix it. I guess maybe sell like a AI kind of machine, right? That helps me, a machine or a system for these accountancy firms, right?
Yeah. And,
That'd be the
and you're
best
used to
kind of
this
way.
right now because of the nature of automations. You do automations for somebody, and what happens? Oh, I forgot I actually need an automation for this, this, and this. And then you're like, well, dude, this is like double what I actually ended up committing to. But if you came in and said, hey, even for automations, you could still do the same thing. Hey, we come in and we do a full CRM build for you, and then we build your entire client management dashboard. And we build a full front end and back end sales system, sales and operation system for you. And then when somebody says, hey, man, I actually need you to build out my Slack as an example, then you say, well, that's something that we do on top of the front end, back end system that we build. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of times the expectations and framing happen in the sales process. And it's just easier to say, like, this is what we're delivering, this is what we're doing when you pitch. But by effect, your fulfillment becomes easier because you're selling the same thing every single time. So you're not going to deal with the same problems that a typical growth operator model is going to deal with.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's a good one. It's good to know that I'm not going to experience the same thing unless I like put myself in the situation, I guess, to experience that, because I guess that
Right.
happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Okay. And is there any like other things that would be beneficial for me to know other than I kind of know all the action steps I need to go and take? Is there anything beneficial or anything else that you recommend I do? I guess just spending more time understanding the niche, finding the problems. Also, obviously, I want to make sure when I start running my own agency, like properly with this, I'm using AI myself and using a team to like leverage my time, so I'm not just caught up in this kind of freelancer agency trap where I kind of just spend all my time doing the fulfillment for the clients. Is there anything else like that I should kind of know or be wary of? But yeah,
As you start to scale, you're really not an agency owner if you do the fulfillment. So it's
okay,
actually kind of like a false idea where people call themselves agency owners, but they do the fulfillment. Well, you're not technically an agency owner. And I'm not saying that to be rude, but it's true. If you do the service, you are, by definition, you do everything. You're a freelancer, right? And so it's all about focusing on the highest leverage thing. For most people, that's going to be client acquisition because they're going to do everything that you're doing by client acquisition, right? You just have a little bit different of a starting point. And so, you figure out what the problems are, you figure out how you can package and sell this in a scalable, duplicatable way. You get somebody to do the fulfillment for you, you negotiate a deal with them, and then you just go balls to the wall client acquisition, and that's the only thing that you focus on. And then because you have a fulfillment background, you can still quality assure, make sure things are working better. You can be able to jump into some accounts and think, hey, maybe this is something that we can make better or some improvements that we can make, etc. It's just like 90% of your time needs to go into client acquisition. If 10% goes into fulfillment, it's not the end of the world, especially with your background, but it's just making that the main focus.
cool, perfect, makes sense. Is there any like action points or like a summary that I should kind of build from this call of like all the things I should do? I don't know if you want to chop that
No,
part
yeah,
up,
for
but
sure, dude.
it's kind of, I just
It's
wanted to
no,
see
it's
what you
fine.
thought.
My brain doesn't really work that way, so it's always hard for me to do this. Sit down with the client, do a full audit, bring literally every single person that is involved in the different stages of their business. From there, sit down and analyze all the different problems that they have. figure out what are the top down most important problems to solve, whether on the back end side, the service delivery side for them, the sales side, like all the different elements of their business, and also figure out why they need to solve those problems and why it's important. So like by getting time back, they make more money, but they also get more time back to focus on sales. You know, you might be able to figure out new things that they can sell, etc. And, you know, build the solutions for all those problems. Really think about the best way to do that. You get them good results, they're happy, you've made some money, life is good. I would now take that money and then reinvest it back into scaling the concept that you've now built and focused on client acquisition for yourself around CPAs, accountants, and then taking that one big case study that you have and packaging that into more and more and more and more clients, and then just building out that repeatable, scalable thing that you learn from working with that client.
Perfect. Yeah, and I guess naturally it will evolve as well. The more I learn, the more AI changes as well, right? Because I feel like
for
we're
sure.
definitely in a period now where it's like everyone's kind of heard of the Make.com and those things, and they've heard of the voice agent, but they're kind of in the in-between phase of like AI can do certain things, but there's new things that have came out like Claude Code or this Claude bot. I don't know if you've used it, John, or looked into that, but
A little bit.
it's a little bit crazy. Like it's like an employee, I guess. So I guess in like 12 months, it might be a case where that could then become your COO, or that could then become like or that even could be the accountant inside the business. So like kind of trying to act on it fast as well is going to be another thing for me, because I know this time isn't going to last forever, and there's going to be a lot of other people that are going to be trying to do the same thing just now. So it's good to have like your advice on kind of the agency side of things and like how to fulfill and structure things going forward. So yeah, got a couple really good takeaways. Can't wait to like go and work on them. But yeah, excited.
Sweet, man. Well, you have to keep us posted on your progress, and everybody's going to be eager to hear how you're doing. I hope you enjoyed the call with Callum. I hope you have some takeaways that you can scale with. But look, that call is just a fraction of what I do with my partners inside of our mastermind, agencyclients.com. We literally help them build their entire foundation with market leader positioning, their offer, their appointment setting, their sales, and their fulfillment processes so they can remove themselves from the business and scale past $30,000 per month. I've helped dozens of agency owners scale past $30,000 a month. And of course, with my own agency, I scaled from $0 to $2 million per year in just 10 months. So if you want my help scaling your agency, whether you're brand new and you're just getting started, or you have some skills or some clients already, click the first link in the description and go to agencyclients.com, watch the short video over there, and apply for a call with us. Would love to help you scale your agency, and I will see you in the next video.